It happened when I was very young. Something I didn't discover through hypnosis that happened to my mother and I as we were driving to my ballet class. And we saw a UFO out our window, and it came down lower and lower until it was right above a telephone pole. And our car stalled, and there were about 12 other cars stalled around us, and white beams of light were shooting out from the craft, and one hit me in the face, and I was paralyzed. It came through the roof of the car. It didn't come through the window. And I remember another person next to us had a white beam of light in his face. My mother asked him if he thought it was a UFO, and he said he thought it was. And I saw a tall, thin man, I thought, walking in between our cars, and when he reached our car, my mother went to sleep. And then 3 small beings came and took me out of the car and floated me into the craft.
Okay, 3 small beings and what did they look like?
They had large heads and big black eyes, and it was very fuzzy. I was almost passed out at that time.
And they floated you up onto the spacecraft, and then what happened?
They put me onto a table, and they showed me a long needle, and they put the edge of the needle into my navel. And then they floated me back down to my car and shut the door on my back, and my mother woke up, and we continued on to my ballet class. And when we got there, my class was nearly over. I had missed an hour of it. And my mother called the FAA to report the craft, and other people had called also, and including a lieutenant colonel from the Air Force.
All right. Now, you had another incident happen to you?
Well, 3 months later, they came back, and they took me from my room. Actually, I walked out into the front yard. My parents were standing out in the front yard also, and took me aboard the craft and removed something that looked like a placenta attached to an umbilical cord.
From your body?
Yes.
Now, what are you saying happened to you?
Well, I can only speculate that they must have put something in me to, I think they
You feel you were artificially inseminated? You
Yes.
feel you were impregnated by it?
Yes.
And they were harvesting...
As crazy as it sounds.
Well, a lot of things sound crazy. A lot of things are inexplicable. Doesn't mean they don't happen. But you're saying you feel that you were somehow impregnated and they were taking the child?
Yes. Well, as 3 months into the pregnancy.
All right, now, do you tell people this story? Do you share this story with people?
I do share the story with people. I think it's a very important thing to share. Also, I know that it happens to so many people, and if I had thought that I was alone in this, it would have been very difficult. And I am still searching to this day for other people who were there in the intersection with me, and possibly the lieutenant colonel who saw what I saw.
Okay, but are you generally greeted with skepticism from people? Do people...
Yes, but it's surprising how many people do believe this, because...
Yeah, I mean, I talked to the audience during the break, and how many of you in the audience believe these stories? A lot of you do.
And
Yeah.
I'm not trying to convince anyone that it's
No, we
true.
understand. No, but you have to understand also that according to a Roper poll, I think nearly 4 million Americans say that they've had a similar experience to you folks. So, I mean, you're not talking about a small number of people. How has this changed your life? I would assume that it has.
Well, I think about it every night when I go to sleep, because recently I became engaged and I live with my fiance, and now they're visiting us together, and he woke with an incision scar in his back about 2 inches long. So I know it's still happening, and it concerns me about having my own children, but through help of friends and people I know, I'm getting through it.
I didn't ask you about the physical evidence that you claim to have sustained from one of these abductions. What did they do to you?
Well, the first abduction I remembered without regression hypnosis. Also, I was taken aboard a craft, and they showed me a small BB, and they told me they were going to put it in my nose because they had 2 tubes going from my nose to my feet, and that it would not hurt. But they took an instrument and put the BB on the end of it and punctured the soft palate of my mouth. And it hurt very badly, and blood spurted onto my gown that they had given me, and I still have those puncture wounds in my mouth.
Which have never been explained by a doctor?
He asked me what I put up there, because it has scar tissue around it, so it was obviously done after birth.
Okay.
I think people think that you are put under hypnosis and you're very relaxed, and you ask these questions, what happened? You say, oh, I was taken aboard a spacecraft and this happened. But I know, Michael and I both worked with Bud Hopkins. It's not like that at all. When you get to that moment that you maybe have some missing time, a block of missing time, getting through that is the most traumatic thing. I almost threw up all over Mr.
No,
Hopkins.
I'm not suggesting it wasn't true for this young woman.
When I was 6 years old, I hadn't seen anything about this, and the last thing I wanted to really believe was that this happened. Actually, the last thing I would want to believe is that I'm crazy, so I guess it's better that it happened.